The King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Wrestling is Real podcast, because wrestling,
whether you like it or you don't like it,
needs us. Welcome to episode 662 of the Wrestling is Real podcast, and welcome to the 9th anniversary of this program, December 18th, 2012. And the wrestling business has definitely changed a lot when you know that TNA was still trying to be burgeoning as some solid brand with Bischoff and Hogan back around and trying to make something for themselves, but it was on the way down from it. Then you had WWE, which was still at a very much of a high, ruthless aggression era, and we had other companies that were out there, Ring of Honor, not as prominent, but finally on the map nationally because I could watch it on Sinclair Broadcasting, and I had those shows to watch all throughout. And where we are now, Ring of Honor, by the time I get to this program, is pretty much null and void. Any semblance of the original Ring of Honor is done, except for the fact that some of the titles are still being used and still being defended on other brands. So you got that, and basically GCW is handling that business for the time being. Impact Wrestling has survived several different incarnations and is on steady ground with Anthem Entertainment. The return of the NWA and Billy Corgan. The return of MLW relaunched under Court Power. And the knowing that we had Wrestle Kingdom that became a thing that made New Japan so popular and really put New Japan more into the minds of wrestling fans year-round, looking at Best of the Super Juniors or other events that are going on now as New Japan has made their way into the States. Same thing with AAA, watching Triple Mania and other events they do regularly, and knowing they were trying to make their way into the States as well regularly, where wrestling is in such a period of expansion, and the TV territories really putting themselves together. It's a lot that has gone on since I started this program. And the fact that, I'm putting out roughly 60 plus odd episodes a year of this program. Originally started doing the show on Tuesdays, moved it to Wednesdays, and I look forward and I think about it every time I wake up Wednesday morning. I got to do wrestling. I got to talk about wrestling, and the schedule's worked out just right. Now even better, watching Dynamite puts me in a great mood so I can do this show. So you've probably been catching me for the last couple of years in a chipper mood because of what's going on. And at the very top of wrestling, as it is, professional wrestling, are two companies that are definitely at polar opposites when you look at the way things are. And it definitely feels that way. And that's okay. I don't mind it being that way for me because of the directions they're going. The more things change, the more wrestling goes back to where it was. Because I really feel like wrestling as a whole has started to go back and revert itself back to territory days. We know that WWE is focusing more on the type of athletes they have being featured, and then be able to go ahead and create over-the-top characters, which I think having somebody fresh into the mix and selling them on the fact of doing a really completely off-the-wall character is an easier sell for somebody new into the business as opposed to a professional wrestler that feels like they have the integrity of saying, well, we don't need to be doing something like this. I mean, I have a perfectly good gimmick that you could just use WWE. I mean, look, Killer Cross was a great gimmick. But we know WWE has to trademark it. They have to copyright it. They have to make their own changes and alter them, alter the name, alter the image and likeness. That's what they do because they want to control it. It's easier to do with talent that is roughly coming into the space, and then they can make their changes as needed without any pushback. That's what they're looking to do. And they'll be able to find younger talent that way as well. That'll be appealing. That will be on looks. And you can say, sure, good-looking people? No, well-built people, okay, in great shape. And, yeah, part of the appeal would be, yes, they're very attractive. And you would think maybe they're going to try to be more diverse. They want to make sure they are, representing all makes, ethnicities, persuasions, whatever. They want to make sure they're covering all the bases, checking all the boxes. And AEW, I feel like AEW has become, when I tried to say it felt like it was a Nitro to me, but when I look at it now, when I look at Dynamite every week, I don't think of Nitro or Thunder. I don't feel WCW anymore. And my mind has changed. And you know what changed it was watching the AEW Control Center segment on YouTube exclusively, which I don't miss now because I feel like you get a lot out of Tony Schiavone and the Control Center, just making sure you're caught up on all the things that are happening among their shows when it comes to Dynamite, Rampage, and their pay-per-views and their special events. And this week, leading into the holiday bash for Dynamite, and watching Tony Schiavone going through all the different information and being accompanied by one David Crockett, brother of Jim Crockett Jr., whose father, Jim Crockett Sr. That is really what I feel like is what AEW is becoming today. They are they're basically taking the Crockett playbook and doing a better job of it. And also making sure not to splurge, not to squander money. They don't have a whole lot of contracts you're putting on here that are super exclusive. There are a number of talent they have, but they also have others that are able to work other organizations, other promotions. AEW has evolved with the times and with the flexibility of wrestlers to be able to go and work and make money. And it doesn't not just have to be in AEW. There's no exclusivity in some cases where they have to be like that. But they know that the primary priority for them is AEW. Because you have so many stars of different tiers that are booked so well. You have traditional squash matches all across Dark Elevation and Dark. You even get them on the TV show itself on Dynamite and Rampage. And everybody, you see the records. You get pretty well tracked on storylines. No matter how simple they are, they make sure to keep you with the reasoning as to why matches matter and why records matter and why titles matter. I mean, you look at what they did this week for the WWE Championship, set up for day one. You look at the AEW title match, set up for the premiere of Dynamite, moving over to the Superstation, or the mothership, as Excalibur called it, TBS, the Superstation, which it just even validates more and more, just confirms my claim. It feels like the Crockett promotions. It feels like the NWA with the Crockett's in the 80s. I mean, there's enough there to make you feel that way. Tony Schiavone, part of the commentary, Excalibur really leading the charge as the mouthpiece, really to take it home, all the action going on in the ring, what JR would have done or Tony would have done early on, but Excalibur takes that spot, and now Schiavone and Ross take the expert roles. And the fact we don't even have analysts on the show, it's just a different story. It's a matter of, you don't have to have that traditional wrestling veteran right there on commentary. Not necessarily. I mean, you do with Taz, or you have somebody else that's going to be there. But, or it's Mark Henry, or it's Big Show. They have a good setup, or Eddie Kingston. They have a good setup of what they do. They look like they're having fun out there in AEW. And you could just tell that with some of the things they're doing, baby faces are baby faces. And you could just look at it. I mean, the fact you still got Sting out there. The touring schedule of AEW, when you look at what they do, where they go on a regular basis, they are actually following the real setup of what their tickets are like. When you look at what they're doing, their events are pretty set up the same way. They run shows pretty much what the Crockett promotion would have done. They stay in the Southeast predominantly with various areas that are prominent for what WCW and NWA were in the 80s and 90s. Greensboro Coliseum, and Schiavone hit it over the head over and over. The history of this arena and what it has meant. Bojangles Coliseum. When you look at, they go to Washington, D.C., and NWA and WCW went to there quite a bit, to the Capitol Center. Going to New Orleans, going to Dallas, going to, of course, Atlanta and Duluth, Georgia. All of that there. Chicago. NWA used to regularly go over there for shows. And you look at what they're doing, they regularly go and do what they're doing with this. They, and even the fact that they're working in Orlando, that would have been something that, of course, Eric Bischoff set up going from MGM Studios. But here, it's Universal. But it's the same idea as doing what Impact Wrestling did back in the day. It's fun like that. It works. What they're doing now with AEW is cut from the cloth. Plus, you have Cody Rhodes. You got Dusty's family involved in it. Cody and Dustin. You have former members of the old guard of NWA embedded into this. When you look at Tully Blanchard, or Arn Anderson. Just look at what you have and the basis of it. Lots of managers of various styles and formats, and some really incredible wrestlers that they have on the roster. But it's a tinge of today. It definitely hits a certain mark when you look at some of the stars they have that are young, that are accomplished, that are just so damn good that you'd be surprised on how well they got themselves up to where they are, and AEW is benefiting from it. When you look at MJF and the level of success there, and you look at, they're able to successfully take stars from the indies and really elevate them to another level. I think Orange Cassidy has definitely been pushed to another level. Jungle Boy the same way. And then you see the positioning of the stars that they have brought in their free agents. When you look at Miro, you look at Jericho, you look at Moxley, you look at Kinks is another one where, we saw him in certain spots in Impact Wrestling, and he's been around, but to the level he is now is something special. Darby Allin of the Pillars, Dr. Britt Baker. Just the names we're synonymous with now with AEW that you've recognized, that you can't say we're, the organic evolution of characters within 3 years of this brand that have been brought together, now meshed with all these great free agents they've brought in. Now you got the Undisputed Era. 3 out of 4 have made it onto the AEW roster. Kyle O'Reilly debuting tonight with Bobby Fish, Adam Cole. Now you got the dynamic with the Young Bucks. There's just so much talent on there. And they have nights where certain stars are not on the show, certain stars that are. And, you think about it. There's a lot of stars we didn't see tonight that you could have put another show with and have an equally good Dynamite. Remember, with the roster that they have right now on AEW, you could change the roster for 3 different shows. Completely different names on each Dynamite that would be just as good. Just as good. It's fresh. It's consistently rotated. And when they get to shows, they matter. Look at the way that he did tonight, and I'm going to go back to the WWE in a second. When you look at the way they set up Bryan Danielson and Adam Page, Hangman and Adam Page, you set that match up, 60-minute Broadway, the draw, which was fantastic, over and over. You can still watch that now. Just really just enjoy it. And then we come to tonight's promo. Adam Page lays it out. The fact that Bryan Danielson decided to talk about judges at the end of the time limit, that's pretty funny. But either which way, they brought up no time limit. They brought up, Adam Page brought up various ideas. Iron Man, no time limit. All we know is the match is coming back for a rematch 3 weeks later at the TBS premiere of Dynamite. But they're so well booked going forward when you look at what they have. And then this year coming up, they're setting up the new deal with the Battle of the Belts. Since they can't call it Clash of Champions, Battle of the Belts. And so far, we know that Riho and Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, are battling for the AEW Women's World Championship. So we know for that. But that's the only match we know so far. But that is something that we need. People want to go and realize that we're going to go and watch and check out. Which is great. Meanwhile, WWE. Okay, they are notoriously doing bad habit booking right now and not doing any justice for some of their younger stars because they don't care. And I really believe that. I feel that in the bottom of my heart. I don't think they really care. I think they're biding time, okay, BIDING, biding time for their new roster of stars. Some of the stars they have in NXT and some of the stars they have over in this new NIL program to come up to fruition. So their future is in a name, image, likeness program, the next in line, which it's got to produce something in the next year or two. And in the meantime, this company is going to continue to have certain new stars being brought up to the fold to fill time. Meanwhile, the leads and storylines are going to be the same stars. Okay? I wouldn't be surprised if we see Kevin Owens, Seth Rollins, Lashley, and Big E continuing to fight over the belt and staying in that main event spot or rotated around in some way, shape, or form going forward. You still have Edge that can be around for the next year or two. You have Miz, you got AJ Styles. On the Raw brand, you got Finn Balor. You got a lot of established stars that you could just continue to just work off of and not worry about. You know, they could just work off of the same roster and they'll just build something else, which we know that the match will be, at the pay-per-view will be good, but the lead up to it will not do any good. Because this company is going to go along, they're going to limp along with their creative. They're going to limp along doing lazy. They're not booking creative. They don't want to book creative too extensively. They don't want to book it too long term. Well, they don't mind being booking long term, where they just say, okay, we have a beginning, and we're going to leave these stars together with each other in the program until we decide not to. With probably no end in sight, except for the main event feuds. That's it. The main event feuds get some play, but that's all this Vince Bruce and the team have time for to really care about are those feuds. Everything else, the undercard is underestimated. The undercard is utilized badly. They're the undercard for a reason. And I think WWE really does feel like they're not too worried about in certain matches where they just need to go and build a couple of matches for main events when it's just an arena show. Like right now, I'm looking at the ticket situation for WWE, right? And I'm looking at the SmackDown show coming up in Miami coming up in March. I was looking to see what the tickets look like. I'm looking at other setups for the shows. And I noticed, and maybe I'm wrong, but I've been noticing that the booking for their shows, they're not relying on filling out the entire arena. Does anybody else notice that? If you've been looking at tickets anytime at all, ask yourself, do you see anything where you're seeing that happening? Pretty common. Because I look right now, it's one thing for the live events. They're going to have a full house, but I'm looking at the TV tapings. Okay, when I look at, let's say, Monday Night Raw is coming up from Detroit. If I look at tickets right now, at the moment, I don't see them necessarily. See, they have blocked out for Detroit, Michigan. Little Caesars Arena, you're blocking out a good chunk of the upper deck, behind the stage, of course. Behind hard camera, there are no seats. Only a couple of areas behind the hard camera where they have people there for the cameras. Because you're not going to see anything else behind the cameras where those cameras are situated. But the angles where those cameras on the floor are going to be, they're going to be seeing people in the stands. Otherwise, if you're looking out to the other side of the ring, the other side of the stage, and hard camera, that's where your tickets are. That's where people are when you're looking at it. That's what I look at things right now, because they're selling tickets in that form. When I look at that, let me look again. Let me look at SmackDown coming up. And when I look at SmackDown, it's the same thing applies. If you look at every ticket on Ticketmaster, you look at the layout of the shows, you'll see the tickets are at the camera angles that they care about. They're not even worried about filling the arena. I'm looking at Mohegan Sun coming up, first weekend of January after the holidays. They're not caring. Their tickets, they're not too cheap. They got $550 VIP packages, but you can find tickets as low as $20, $30. So these TV tapings, they're not caring about. They're not worried about getting the whole setup for a full house. They're not worried about sellout crowds. They know they can't get it right now with the current setup. I mean, they're still going to, the arenas, they're going to be able to get concessions where they can. There's going to be areas they're going to be able to block off where they don't have to conserve concessions. They don't have to have the entire arena full for one of their shows. They can get themselves 5,000, 6,000 folks in the arena for the shows. You can actually watch the fans in the arena, and they can pipe the crowd noise in if they want to create that bigger sound like they did in the Thunderdome. So they can do that now. And this is where I think WWE is being strategic, but they're also being lazy because they know that their product is not good enough on a regular basis for their TV show to give people the good watch at the arena. Now, meanwhile, you could set things up where they are, because really there's no audience participation. They're just watching. Really, the fans watching a TV taping, that's like a studio audience. That's what they are. They're not being paid attention for participation. Only so much. Not a lot of signs. If you see certain people, they're going to have in front of the camera on TV. Otherwise, that's it. That's all they're worried about. That's all that matters to them. When you look at the shows, listen, they know they're not going to compete with football. Monday Night Football continues to destroy them on a regular basis, so they can't do anything about that. And their shows are what they're going to be. Like right now, the Raw rating for Monday night was down. It drew an average of 1.553 million viewers, which is pitiful. But as long as they have football, they're not going to really do much. Not to mention the NFL, they had Monday Night Football on the main network, ABC, and ESPN. When I look at the audience that they had for Monday Night Football, 8.521 million viewers. And I don't know what they had on the ESPN broadcast. Actually, 7.3 million viewers on ESPN. 15 million viewers total for Monday Night Football up against the 1.5 million that Raw got Monday night. The hours were horrible. Like when you look at the last hour of the show, 1.460 million. Now, they're still holding a pretty good spot when it comes to the 18 to 49-year-old demographic, which is what cable cares about. Because they still held, besides the news shows, they still had pretty strong, ranked 7th for the night. And they also had a lot of competition on the main networks because they had a lot of specials and all that were going on as well, which would have kind of cut into what they were doing. They have what they're going to have. They're going to milk what they can by sandwiching a main event storyline into 2 segments, keeping the same stars together in programs because they have nothing else better to do. Maybe shuffling around their spot in their segments, but otherwise, what else? I mean, their stories move along very sluggishly. AJ Styles and Omos have just split up. And, they are just kind of just filling space. They're filling time. And they don't have the star power on a regular basis for them to really bring the show back up. But again, we know that the ratings were never going to be that great in December anyway for this show. It's not until Royal Rumble season that we really start things picking up. Because they'll have to bring something back in to bring the story back up for them in January to get Royal Rumble started. I don't know what they're going to have on the Raw brand to get people going up and talking about it. On SmackDown, it's a different story because they have Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns. And they work off of that. And their ratings so far have been good. On SmackDown, they've held up. As long as you keep Roman Reigns out there, as long as you do, and you got Brock Lesnar out there, yeah, you're going to do pretty well. Last week, 2.030 million. But they keep staying above 2 million, period. Even with a bad time after the holidays or into the holiday season where nobody's going to do that well. But they're holding on. And they're doing okay. Meantime, with NXT, they're staying just around the 600,000 mark for their show. Holding on with what they can. Because of what their audience is and what they're going to have for that show. Regardless of if they have AJ Styles over there to do a cameo appearance to run a storyline there against some star that is on the up and rise at NXT. Sure, they could try to do that. But there is nothing. Funny how Roman Reigns now has a shirt needle mover. They don't have a lot of needle movers. Not right now. Roman Reigns, Brock Lesnar. I still think Becky Lynch has some of that. I think Charlotte Flair probably still has some of that. Sasha Banks. Who else? I mean, also, when you have certain stars you bring on board, and you really can't do much with them because of what storylines they're inheriting, or they're being slipped up with. I mean, Bianca Belair and Doudrop, and this is nothing against Piper Niven. She's just been shelved with the coming off of that bad taste of being the lackey for Eva Marie initially, before Eva Marie got released, and where Doudrop has been here, and I've heard a lot of people standing up for her. Sure. I mean, Piper Niven could be the next Nia Jax, or better than Nia Jax, but also just need to be that next heavyweight in the women's division that towers over all. The next Karma. They could always use a star like that to shake things up. But at the moment, listen, she's a good wrestler, but they're not using her right. This limp, lazy booking they're doing, she was using the storyline specifically for the payoff that they had on Raw, which that's when the crowd actually woke up. Bianca Belair doing the KOD on a Doudrop, feat of strength for Bianca Belair. That was the story that they really wanted to tell. They wanted Bianca Belair to show, look, feat of strength, feat of strength, feat of strength. That's it. And that's really just the one-trick pony they're putting her in, which is stupid. There's much more to this character, but it's simple, it's generic. You can feed that to the global audience, and they're going to buy it, and that's all they got to do. Now, the American audience will expect more, and they should. The global audience, I don't know what their ratings are, but I'm sure there are still people that are going to watch these shows regularly. I think they do. Let you in. Why not? Because it's still wrestling. It's better than what they have where they are. So the global audience is still going to be around to watch these shows. They're not going to be as finicky as the American fans are, because we are finicky fans. We've been spoiled for a long time. So there's that to be considered as well. to try to go after anything that's very intricate, like we're not going to get some Marvel storyline like the Spider-Man No Way Home movie. We're not getting that. You think we're ever going to get a story like that? No, not at all. AEW might give you something a little bit intricate like that, or something that's a little more meat to it, a little more layers of storyline. But WWE doesn't need to do that unless there are certain people that are allowed to be able to do something. With the Edge and the Miz right now, I mean, I get the storyline. It's not bad. I really think people have really crapped on it when we have to see where it goes. Look, these two guys are professionals. They've been around on this company on television for a long time. I don't take anything away from the Miz. I think they're going to do well together. I really do. I mean, sure, the predictable storyline, and even Edge called it out before it even happened. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, Beth hasn't been involved yet. But people can complain about it all they want, but I don't mind the Edge and Miz. I think that's actually a decent storyline. With two guys that are capable to go ahead and weave out a storyline themselves, because I'm sure Edge has autonomy and creative control over what he wants to do with that whole setup. So he can do that here, and that's fine. And Miz is being elevated here back into a prominent main event level storyline, semi-main event on Raw that works out for them. And then the other semi-main event you have is Becky Lynch and Liv Morgan. My thing with the Liv Morgan storyline, no. I do not dispute Liv Morgan is not bad in the ring. She came into that whole class of stars just after the Horsewomen that have done very well and have been trained very well in the Performance Center and have worked well in NXT. I mean, she deservedly made her way to the main roster as part of the Riot Squad. And, you know, there was something about where they took that character where she wasn't the mouthpiece anyway. She was part of the entourage with the color tongue and the color hair and the real kind of just young. There was something to that character where they just really brought her out as more of a, just, you know, much more to the younger audience, more to an appeal, and just letting her just be kind of wild. Almost very rebellious, almost very, just adventurous. Just a little bit, just a different look to her. And what they brought now with the Liv Morgan character is trying to glamorize her a bit. She still has a little bit of that feel of what she was in Riot Squad, but it's much different. She's not so punk-like. They took that away from her. They decided, we're going to make her more glamorous. We're going to make her more Trish Stratus-like. That's what I feel like she is. It doesn't work for her. And even when she was in NXT, she was never looking like that. She's not made to look as like some sex symbol. But they've tried several times. They tried it when they put her out there with Rusev and the whole Lana and Lashley angle, the whole bisexual angle. Then we're here, and they really took, almost felt like a little bit of the Emelina type of feel of the character that we're trying to do there. But she's not necessarily like model type. She's a beautiful girl, and she's talented. She's, you know, just a kind of just a spark plug when it comes to in the ring. I think she works well. I thought she worked fine with Becky Lynch in terms of the ring work, but that promo work is flat, monotone, and out of key. And I don't think it has anything to do with the script. The script is bad, but her delivery was worse. They have to say that. I mean, would you listen to what she had to go and say out there and the way she did her segment? When they set up the contract signing with Liv Morgan, she had a couple of good lines in there. Okay, when she talked about her former friends, quote, you're the reason why your friend is gone, just like the reason why your big, fat, greedy contract is the reason why my friends are gone. How does it feel knowing you have become everything you despised? That was a good line. And you could just tell when confronting Becky Lynch, she has a little more fire to her. But every time I heard her talk about when I become the Raw Women's Champion at day one, I mean, it was Bella Twins bad. it was Brie Bella bad. It really was. I don't say that lightly. So let's go into what she actually talked about in the promo itself. Now, look, the content of the storyline and the setup to the video, no matter what the video, I mean, they took the effort and took the time to go ahead and put this video together of the attack by Liv Morgan in Becky Lynch's training facility there with Seth Rollins in Iowa. Okay, they did that. So let's get into it. Now, Liv Morgan is wearing a cast on her arm to sell the storyline where her arm got wedged into the stairs that Becky Lynch stomped into. Okay, so we have that part leading up into the rematch coming up at day one. She's holding a kendo stick. Morgan goes on about how Lynch tried to help herself at day one by injuring her arm last week. Then she goes on about how she couldn't let Becky get the upper hand, and she followed Becky to the gym. But little did Liv know that Becky had something similar in mind. And Liv admits Becky may have been a step ahead there, but she learned Becky's afraid of her as she had a student dress up like her because she knew Liv was coming for payback. Liv didn't want to be beat up by an innocent woman, but she was so happy when she thought it was Becky. Liv goes on saying that her arm will be raised at the end of the day one match, and Becky will have all the time in the world to hang out with her baby and her hot husband. Listen, the promo is, I mean, if you take the content of the promo, the storyline behind it, that's fine. Okay? Whoever put the creative together to go and create the story, okay, in text, in idea, that's fine. It works okay. But let's break down just the delivery of this, which is the problem. Deadpan delivery by Liv Morgan. She couldn't sell this. How emotional can you get with a damn scripted promo, which I've talked about over and over? Man, Randy Orton's gotten better at it. I don't know if he's been still scripted down pretty much with science before. I'm sure he still does, or if he's bullet pointed, but there's something there. And you can tell the difference between other stars. When you look at Edge and The Miz, they're not scripted. They're talking points. And it feels natural coming out of them. Bianca Belair, I think, is pretty good at scripted promos. When I look at Big E, I think he's working off of talking points. I mean, that's why I feel like you can just tell certain stars. Bobby Lashley and MVP, they're definitely working off of talking points. Going back into Lynch, now everybody can go ahead and shit on Becky Lynch all you want. I have no problem with her as a heel character. Am I totally sold on it? No. But is it not bad? No, I don't think it's bad. I don't have a problem with it. I think Becky Lynch, especially when they've kind of changed the character up, so they are, promoting the fact that, mentions the husband, the baby, the workload, this and that. And the fact that she doesn't go up and change her pitch where she cracks her voice, she stays down in tone, and honestly is very, very honest in her delivery of what she's saying. Because she puts down Liv Morgan pretty regularly and pretty dastardly, I must say. That works. And I think people are, when you watch her mannerisms out there, she's learning from Seth. So Seth knows how to get himself over as a heel. Becky is getting the same thing right now. It works. So when Becky comes out, she says, congratulations for beating a poor girl senseless. Says she's paid her dues, which is why she's not soft. It'll take more than a few kendo stick shots to keep her down. And when you're this big time, you're too big to be down. Okay, the big time Becky spit. She's trying to sell the gimmick, and I don't have a problem with it. Is it great? No, but it's fine for what they're trying to do. And listen, they can put her on a shirt. They can sell that out there. People will know the name Big Time Bex. It's working. They trademarked it. They're making the most of it. Becky says Liv has stepped up more than she thought, and goes on, and Liv says she can't scare her any longer because she will start off the nearest champion. Says her spotlight feels good, and Becky can come check it out and finish what she tried to start. But then Liv doesn't use the kendo stick. She just drops it to Becky's feet, saying she brought it for Becky to use, not for herself. And then Becky yells at Liv, tells her not to disrespect her. So the extra heel heat right there, the friction comes in. Becky says Liv is lucky she has a private jet to catch. Storms off as Liv stands tall in the ring. All smiles as the music starts up. But the way that whole storyline was done from the video package, the footage they had, that they created and they were choreographed and orchestrated poorly. Okay, it was not done well. It is what it is. But we've seen a template of this storyline before as well, right? Did we see Natalya and was it Natalya and Sasha? Right? I forget who it was that had where it was something in ring and the same thing happened. I'm sure they did it in Thunderdome too. So we've seen that where the attacks backstage or in training. We've seen that many times before. There's nothing new there. It's a tried trope. Why not do it? We needed to go back to their bag of tricks of tried and true professional wrestling tropes. WWE is not afraid to go back to it. And I can just hear Bruce Pritchard pitching in the back. He's like, okay, creative. Here's the story that we have. Now, the story with Becky Lynch and Liv Morgan is fine. The storyline with Big E and Bobby Lashley is fine. And I actually think creative is trying to put up some decent storylines for some of these shows. The TV matchups when you got like, say, the Mysterios or AJ and Styles and Omos or RK Bro, those mid-card or mid-card belts or some of those other storylines, yeah, they're just flat and just hokey. They're not doing much with those. But the main event storylines, at least two to four of these storylines, have some meat to it. There's actually something a little more layers to it, and a story that is being told that is cohesive and does make sense and can be put together. But it's the fact you're doing it live. You're not pre-scripting this. You can't do anything where you're, when you set up, a rare time you're going to do something that is pre-staged. And you're just doing it in real time, and there's not much to it, and it looks bad. I mean, I get what they're trying to do. And Liv Morgan decided to go visit Becky Lynch's training facility. The onus to that. I mean, this is where the production team, where Bruce, Vince, and all them, they decided, well, we should do this as a setup to this promo, to this idea, this part of the storyline. This next part of the story we're trying to tell leading up to day one. Because this is really the last onus here before we get to day one. We're 2 weeks away. So they want to go ahead and get this here set up, and then just set something up simple to go and lead up to the match itself. But this is the real close to it. The go home part of this angle is this. Because you already have everything set up to get the match going on January 1st. We already had the setup for it. It's been well documented. They already had their match before. And here we are. Okay, they've set up this match. People are complaining about, well, is this going to continue after day one? Could Liv Morgan Patel actually win the belt? No. She's being made a decently formidable opponent, sure. But other than that, she's nothing else. Nothing more than that. Doesn't make a difference. So they're not worried about that part. They're making her just enough of shine on her to make her an opponent, at least a formidable opponent, that'll have a decent 10 to 12 minute match with Becky Lynch to buy time until we get to her actual opponent, which I still think it could be Asuka returning. It could be Alexa Bliss returning. Who knows who it could be? Or it could be Lacey Evans for all I know. I don't know. There's three names right there they could be bringing back that could definitely be brought over to take on Becky Lynch next. I don't know. And that's what they have decided for that. And then when you look at what day one's going to do and what they have for the matches themselves, again, the matches are good. I don't have any problem with the matches they have at all, what they have set up. So we know that IC title match, Shinsuke Nakamura will take on Sami Zayn. Madcap Moss versus Drew McIntyre, which is just, without putting Happy Corbin into the actual storyline with Drew McIntyre, Madcap Moss, obviously they're giving time with him. So it'll be just a quick, probably should be a glorified squash, if anything. But Drew McIntyre is just getting something here to work with Corbin and Moss. With Corbin, at ringside, it'll make it where Drew McIntyre has a 2-on-1 situation that he should be able to finish off in preparation for a future title shot against Roman Reigns or Brock Lesnar, which is going to probably be Roman Reigns, I would think. You could do Brock Lesnar and Drew McIntyre, or you could do Roman Reigns and Drew McIntyre. Either one of those matches are fine. You can have those three together in the main event, and that's fine too. They could use somebody else to probably add into that mix. Obviously, they have 4 people right now within the title mix over on Raw, but you need a 4th person on that SmackDown side. Who is that going to be? I don't know. But it doesn't look like they have anybody right now that's ready to go like that, or anybody they're going to bring in part-time that's going to come in to fill that spot. Who knows what it'll be. You got Becky Lynch will defend the Rollins title against Liv Morgan. Usos versus New Day. SmackDown Tag Team titles. The whole thing with Usos and New Day, there is nobody else. And the tag team division doesn't really matter. I mean, is RK Bro even defending? No. I don't think they're even booked. I mean, you could put Alpha Academy up there with them, and that's their dancing partners right now. But, when you look at the rest of what there is, Alpha Academy doesn't feel like anything formidable here. Street Profits, non-factor. When you look at Mysterios, they're not a factor right now either. The Viking Raiders, nothing. They have tag teams that don't matter. And even if you split them up at some point, which is really the whole idea of where they have tag teams in the first place, to then create storylines after that. We know that's what RK Bro is supposed to be. We know that's what AJ Styles and Omos was supposed to be. So now, Omos and AJ Styles, they had their tag team. They got a title run, split them up, and eventually RK Bro now with a title run. They're going to split up eventually. Then what else do you got? But Usos and New Day doesn't make a difference. They're just peas in a pod. And you know what? You can put those people out in house shows all you want. You got Usos and New Day till you're bleeding to the ears. You're tired of and fatigued of Usos and New Day, but they're going to keep doing it. Edge and Miz is a fresh feud, and they could go along with that all they want. Instead of Edge and Randy Orton or Edge and Daniel Bryan, now we're here with Edge and Miz. Okay. The fact that Miz gets the storyline with Edge, that's a step up for him after dealing with the whole thing with all of last year. Listen, he got to work with Morrison. Miz now gets a solid single storyline again, back with Maurice. He's back to where he was before. He's back to pre-Morrison level again. And Miz is going to be always going to be at a certain level anyway. It can be elevated towards the main event whenever they need him. They did it once before. They now have him with Edge. It's believable. They got a good storyline together. It's not bad. Meanwhile, okay, we now have Seth Rollins, Kevin Owens, and now we have this new dynamic where Blash and Big E kind of are on the same page now after they tagged together and won in a tag team match. Bobby Lashley being booked towards a babyface. And the fans are into it. They're ready to embrace Bobby Lashley as a babyface. And so am I. And for whatever reason, I guess that's why they took the belt off of Bobby Lashley in the first place. Because they took the heat off of him as a heel. And now he comes back, and they brought him in for him to try to get his place back into the title picture. He legitimately beat all 3 of his contenders, or he beat the champion and the 2 contenders in the Fatal 4-Way. Bobby Lashley's being booked as a face, period, all together, all the way through. And I think at day 1, he wins the title. He's babyface champion. I think Bobby Lashley wins the belt. And that's fine. I actually like that altogether. It's a good story. And I don't know where we're going to go with Seth Rollins and Kevin Owens. It's funny because, what was it? The 2020 WrestleMania, they actually had, what was it? Wasn't that one? That was the one they had in the Thunderdome, right? And Kevin Owens had that crazy bump that he had, right? So, full circle with these two, and now they're on the same page together as heels. Interesting. And now I mean, Kevin Owens is re-signed. Sami Zayn is apparently re-signed as well. So you got those guys together that are going to stay around. They're lifers, it looks like, with the company. You could definitely have Bobby Lashley and Seth Rollins in a program leading up to it, because Seth Rollins will still feel like, hey, you put all these other opponents in front of me. I never got my title shot. And who knows what they do with these guys at Royal Rumble anyway. Because then I can see if Bobby Lashley wins, then Big E, Seth Rollins, Kevin Owens, they all are in the Royal Rumble trying to get their shot back after Bobby Lashley. Because whoever wins the Royal Rumble in January will not be going for the Universal title. I don't believe that's going to happen. It's got to be the it's got to be the WWE Championship. I believe that. Now, they could have somebody win the Rumble, and they can give them the title shot against either Brock Lesnar or Roman Reigns. I don't know if they'll do that, but they could. So that storyline's fine. On the Raw side, listen, the storylines are okay, but the execution's bad. And that's part of doing this stuff in real time and the watering down of the original idea coming in. Meanwhile, on the SmackDown side, it's a different story. Now, the Charlotte Flair Toni Storm thing is still nothing special. It's kind of just blah. And when we get to it, you're saying to yourself, okay, they had a tag team match, and Toni Storm got the pin in a tag team match. Leading up to their match, it's this Friday on SmackDown, where they'll take on each other, and Charlotte Flair will probably, in pretty quick fashion, defeat Toni Storm and null and void that feud. Meanwhile, Sasha Banks will be back somewhere in the mix, probably going after Charlotte, I would believe, unless they have somebody else in mind. I don't know, because I forget if Asuka or Alexa Bliss, if they're on Raw or SmackDown anyway, but those two stars are going to be on the way back. I would imagine they'll be returning at some point, and they can both come in and do something here. So you got that. And then meanwhile, while you have some not too bad storylines when it comes to Becky Lynch, Liv Morgan, to a point. Edge of the Miz, to a point. And then Big E and his fatal four-way match he has for the WWE Championship. The Roman Reigns Brock Lesnar story has been fantastic. This company is capable of doing it. But then the other thing, too, is that it's who is helping the program it on site. Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman, on top of the storyline, using himself as the crux to add a new wrinkle to the storyline between Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns, because we've already had these guys face each other. But it's the alignment of Paul Heyman as either special counsel or advocate. And they broke to that on Friday night, and it was fantastic. That storyline there is gold. It's the best storyline of the year. Roman Reigns, Brock Lesnar on the WWE end. That's the best storyline this year. The best feud this year. Brock Lesnar now, full-fledged babyface. The look, this Viking barbarian hunter-gatherer, Canadian, strongman. The Beast is like something else, man. He looks, the look now is amazing. The transformation from MMA fighter to this, tough guy in the woods. This guy, farmer, just this super alpha badass, okay? They have evolutionized. They have really, the character has been, self-made over. And Brock Lesnar now just looks badass. Roman Reigns playing smart as a heel, not trusting Paul Heyman, and firing him. And now what do you have? Where does Paul Heyman fit into the mix now? I don't know. But I think the screw job is in for Roman Reigns. And where Brock Lesnar comes back into play, becomes champ, and Paul Heyman is back as advocate. And Roman Reigns is screwed. And Roman Reigns will turn face as a result. That I believe. So I think what will happen is Brock Lesnar will win. They could do it at day one, and then the rematch at WrestleMania. You could definitely do that. Because it will have the story of Roman Reigns turning face. Because I don't think Brock Lesnar is staying heel. Or staying face. I think we'll get a double turn at day one. Which is the big, when they talk about the big storyline, I think that's what happens. The big thing is supposed to happen. It's a double turn. with Brock turning heel, with Paul Heyman back at his side after the swerve, and Roman Reigns in the bloodline turning face. Yeah, that's where I think things go. I don't know about you, but I've taught myself into thinking that where WWE is right now, yeah, it's not great. They could do so much better execution if they could just tape some things to kind of just make it better. If they did some post-production. They do post-production so well on all their packages to take their live coverage that they have in real time on Raw and SmackDown, and they could take whatever story they want and recraft it into the way it should be. And it looks so much better. We know they have the magic to do that all the time. Why can't they do that within the 2 or 3 hours they have on SmackDown or Raw? And why can't we just say, okay, can we enhance some stars, not by throwing them into feuds that they're not ready for? We don't need them to be in, new talent mode where they need to get wins after wins and build a winning streak just for them to lose. We could change that up. I mean, we could just have, why they have other stars they hold on to. Maybe they're not allowing them to go ahead and have extra stars around that certain stars can go after, just to build up a star with some wins instead of having them taking on each other one-on-one every week in some way, shape, or form. How about letting some of these stars that are looking to build up their scorecard and to say, hey, I'm getting ready to beat you. I'm on a winning streak myself before I take you on, which is what AEW does. AEW, they build their stars. And listen, even with Griff Garrison going up against Malachi Black 6-1, and Griff Garrison has wins, but mostly in the tag team division. But Griff Garrison, to defend Julia Hart and the attack that was put on her, that match actually looked legitimate because you also had Brian Pillman out there trying to help. But, of course, it wasn't going to be anything where Malachi Black was going to drop, but they put a good story with him to make him lose. And then you look at what they've done with Danielson Page. You look what they've done with Adam Cole and Orange Cassidy and the setup for that. Orange Cassidy getting screwed over with the Kyle O'Reilly debut. Well, that made that really good. And Orange Cassidy still is strong after all this because he's taken some losses to Jericho, to among others, when it comes to the TNT title, to Cody and others. So, but he's still strong, which continues to make his faction best friends still look strong because they always win on Dark and Dark Elevation. And every so often they are on television on Dynamite or Rampage. The same thing could go for all the women's stars you have, like Ruby Soho and Nyla Rose. Even though we don't see them every week on Dynamite or Rampage, but we've seen them on, they're on Dark and Dark Elevation regularly, all the time, and building up and padding their records so that they're so strong when this TBS tournament comes in. Same thing with Jade Cargill. She's always on there too, getting some quick wins in, but padding the records. I mean, even when you say something about where, like, Penelope Ford or the Bunny and all that stuff, right? But they're always on those other shows. They're always on television somewhere on YouTube. You can take it for what it is, but they're just building along, and their format and how they're building up things. And like I went back to my original point about AEW, they have their younger stars that are always kind of pushing up and making a big deal out of. When look at when the Crockett days, you had like the Brian Pillmans. At a time, I think Magnum TA was kind of felt in that same lane. And then you had consistently some big stars when it came to baby faces and heels. It could have been Road Warriors. It could have been Nikita Koloff, Sting. You got the Horsemen. And all of that. I mean, there's just so much there. And it's a lot of credit to Tony Khan being such a lifelong wrestling fan and really appreciating various territories. Now, I don't feel like he's because I feel like where he gets a lot of his feels from is from what WCW and NWA did. Meanwhile, he probably did watch WWE because there's a little bit of that, obviously with some of the stars they have. But when I feel the show now and I watch it now, I mean, it's still no matter how you slice it, you have a lot of Turner people that were around for WCW and NWA back in the Keith Mitchell was there back in those days, and his team. You just have a feel and a look and just everything they do with that show, with AEW programming in general, that just feels like it did back in the 80s. It just has this look at what the Crockett's did. You'd have those big shows and the stage, the way everything was set up, it just looked good. And man, just the way they set up things on those shows, it's a different story. And I like it a lot. It's such a good thing. Really can appreciate it. Okay, that's it for closing out the 9th anniversary of the Wrestling Zero podcast, starting year 10 now. And of course, being the anniversary, I want to close the show making sure I shout out those that have also been around to do this show with me. Of course, that's Jeremy G, Marky Mark 811, Xbox One Chuck, and all you listeners that have stuck with me since day one, listen to this program. And for those of you who have found this show, when you have found it, maybe it was right around WrestleMania time or Royal Rumble time, and you just started seeing more of this. Maybe you caught, my recaps of Impact Wrestling or MLW or NWA and AEW, and I really appreciate all of you being here, being along for this ride. I've moved a little bit around when it comes to the website. WrestlingIsReal.com is the home. It's there to stay. I just got it renewed. And I'm not tired of doing this. Not even close. I can sit back here, my lazy boy, pop up on the laptop, put on my microphone, and easily crank out an hour of content and just regularly go through. By the way, next week I'm going to go ahead and close out the rest of the year of wrestling in 2021. We'll start off with May and Double or Nothing, and the touring coming back on board and all the things that happen with that. We'll kind of relish on that next week because obviously wrestling will be kind of like light. We'll still have shows and all, but we'll just kind of wrap up the wrestling year on next week's program. And then next week, we will have day one. And the week after that, we'll have Battle of the Belts. And then, we'll have Hard to Kill. Impact Wrestling's pay-per-view coming up. So, lots of wrestling to watch. Lots to enjoy. Also, a couple of quick moments I got to make a mention of here. Besides the fact that I saw that Sami Zayn most likely has re-signed. Kevin Owens has re-signed for multi-year contract extension. Alexander Hammerstone, your boy Hammer, signing an extension with MLW. He's going to continue with them as their lead baby face on that brand. And I got to tell you something. Keep an eye on MLW, especially if they're able to get themselves on a better TV deal, because you only get so much out of Vice and being sports. Maybe somebody will pick them up, because right now, Impact Wrestling's moving along, chugging along just fine. But I'm telling you something, and I should take a look at the rest of the wrestling business and go through the state of the wrestling brands. I'll talk about that. The other wrestling brands I'll talk about. And then, year in wrestling as well on next week's show. But there's a lot I could talk about when it comes to where Impact Wrestling's gone and their direction. But I'm telling you, keep an eye out on MLW. I don't talk about them enough. But MLW is doing a lot of good things. I like a number of the stars they brought on board when it comes to the Judge, AJ and Duca. I kind of like Calvin Tankman, Alex Kane. I like them. The Dynasty with Richard Holiday and Hammerstone. The breakup of Contra Unit. What happens to Jacob Fatu? We don't know. There's a lot there. And everything going on with Cesar Duran, the former Dario Cueto, and the Lucha Underground shit. Now that we have MLW Azteca, 5150 becoming new tag team champions. The return of the Von Erichs going back to Dallas and Gillies. Just, come on, it's just great. MLW is really fun. And I give a lot of credit to Court Bauer, what he's done with that brand. That's a fun show to watch, and it's different. Even Enzo wasn't that bad coming out there, putting together a match with Matt Cross 2 weeks ago. But I like it all. It's MLW I look forward to every week. I really do. And don't forget NWA. They do good stuff over there. It's just hard to watch because I'm not buying the $5 a month Fight TV subscription, but I'm glad they're going to have a show on YouTube again. NWA USA. I'm looking forward to that. So it's nice to see him back over there. I mean, I know they need the money. I know you need the money, Billy. I get it. So I'll help you out with the pay-per-views. But man, like, let's do something with the TV show. I don't want to be paying $5 a month for that. Can we get it somewhere else where we can actually watch it? Something? Instead of just clips on YouTube? I'd appreciate that. So anyway, still a lot of wrestling coming up next week. I actually like the fact we don't have a TLC to worry about, and then things kind of just die down. Because now we do have shows leading up to January 1st, or the first week of January. That I actually like better than what we had before. To have that extra pay-per-view right now, day one, before Royal Rumble, I love it. I think it's going to be it's a welcome relief to have that on New Year's Day. I enjoy that. And for them to, carve their niche around the Winter Classic with the NHL, that they do their traditional New Year's Day thing. For WWE to do the same thing here, that's pretty cool. And I'm looking forward to that show. It's a good night for it. Come back, and as I close every show, all the other 661 episodes I did before this, I will close out once again, as I always have on this program. Come back for another Wrestling is Real podcast, because wrestling needs us. Thank you for listening to the Wrestling is Real podcast. You can find all previous episodes at WrestlingIsReal.com or subscribe to the show on all major podcast outlets, including Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Follow the King of Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at King of Podcasts, and search King of Podcasts on YouTube, or type youtube.com/JBRASCO951. This has been a presentation of the King of Podcasts Radio Network.